When we talk about variables in a function, we really have two different types of variables. We have independent variables, which are the values that we decide, the values that we plug into the function, and then we have the dependent variables, which are the values that are determined by the independent variable. They are dependent of the independent variable. Best example to think about this is think of somebody who has a job that gets paid hourly. We can think about the things that affect the paycheck. So the amount of hours that somebody works affects the amount of their paycheck. The independent variable would be the amount of hours worked. We can plug in any number, but we could think of it as the pay increases, that dependent variable, which is the money they make, increases as well. So the value, if we look here, we've got a lady named Sarah. She works at SeaWorld. We're talking about the money she earns in July. What depends on what? We know that the pay depends on how many hours she works. So if we're looking at it and we're trying to figure out what is the independent variable, the independent variable is the number of hours that she works. She can control that. And then based off of that independent variable, we have our dependent variable, which is the money that she earns. So the money she earns depends on the amount of hours she works. So the hours is the independent variable, the money is the dependent variable. We got two more examples here. We've got the height of a tree and the number of years since it was planted. We can think of that. We know that as trees age, they get taller. So we can say that the number of years since it was planted is going to be our independent variable. And then as the years go on, the tree gets taller. So the height is going to be our dependent variable. In the second example, we have the age of a BMW and the value of the car. We know that cars start at a certain price, and then as they age, they decrease in value. So the age of our car is going to be our independent variable, and the value is going to be the dependent variable, meaning the value depends on how old the car is. And then the last thing we have to think of when we're talking about variables would be the correlation between the variables. That's pretty simple to think about if we think about our two examples. As our tree example, as the independent variable, and the independent variable typically goes on your x-axis, as that age increased, the height of the tree also increased, which gives us a positive correlation. As x increases, y increases, that's a positive correlation. In terms of the car, as the years increased, the price actually went down. We have a negative correlation here. As x increases, y decreases. And then the last example we have would be a case where we have absolutely no correlation. So our two variables are really, they're not related to each other. There's no relation we can see, so we say there's no correlation between those two variables. An example of this, if we've got a fisherman and he's weighing the fishes that he catches and he measures the length. We could see that this is the scatter plot over here that he graphed. We've got our fish length on the x, we've got our weight on the y. We can see here as the length of the fish increase or gets larger, from left to right in the x it's getting larger, we can see that the weight is also increasing. This we would say is a positive correlation. As x increases, y increases. If we would have something like the graph on the bottom, we would have a negative correlation here. But our correlation kind of just tells us how those variables are related to each other.